Breaking news tonight, a man convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend in 2022 is going to prison with no possibility for parole. Casey Jennings was found guilty of abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and theft of property.
I'll see you tomorrow morning, Casey.
See you tomorrow, brother.
She packed her whole life into a suitcase and moved to Arkansas to become a nurse. She had a plan. She had a future. She wasn't running from anything. She was running towards something. And for a while, it looked like she was going to make it. Then one day, her family couldn't reach her. They called. They texted. Nothing. And the longer the silence stretched, the more they knew something was wrong. Because Allison Castro was not the kind of person who just disappeared. She was the kind of person who showed up for her family, for her goals, for her life. So when she went quiet, the people who loved her didn't just sit and wait. They started asking questions, and the answers they eventually got were worse than anything they had imagined. This is the story of Allison Castro and the man who took everything from her. In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear. Allison Maria Castro was 28 years old, young, driven, the kind of woman who made a decision and followed through on it. Moving to Fayetteville, Arkansas was not a small thing. It was intentional. She was working toward a nursing career, building something real in a place far from home, and she was doing it. Now, before she moved to Fayetteville, Allison had been in a relationship with a man named Casey Jennings. He was 33. The two of them had actually shared a residence together in Fayetteville at one point, which tells you that this was not some distant, casual situationship. These two people had been close. They had shared a home. By the time things went wrong, they were no longer together, but living in the same city as your ex, especially one you used to live with. That kind of closeness doesn't just disappear because a relationship ends. And for Allison, that proximity would turn out to be dangerous in ways she may never have fully seen coming. Anyways, let's talk about what happened. It was mid-August 2022 when Allison was last seen alive, not reported missing yet, not on anyone's radar officially, just gone. And for weeks, that's exactly what she was. Gone. While Casey Jennings went about his life, Allison's family was on the other side of the country, getting no response from their daughter. No calls back, no texts, nothing. Now here's where it gets heavy. The Castro family, they're Hawaiian. And in Hawaiian culture, bones carry mana. That's the word for a person's spirit. The idea that someone's essence, their very soul, lives in their physical remains. So when Allison went missing, this wasn't just a family desperate to find their loved one. This was a family desperate to bring her spirit home. And that distinction matters, because it explains why her mother Michelle would go on to fly to Northwest Arkansas more than 30 times over the next 4 years. Not just to find answers, to find Allison. But in those first weeks after mid-August, nobody outside of Fayetteville even knew she was missing yet. It wasn't until September 2022 that her family formally reported that they had been unable to reach her. Investigators got involved, and once they started looking into Allison's disappearance, they quickly learned she hadn't been seen since mid-August. They also quickly learned about Casey Jennings, the ex-boyfriend, the man she used to live with. And then something happened that nobody could have scripted. On September 19th, 2022, police responded to a residence involving Casey Jennings, not because of Allison, not because of a tip, but because Jennings had been found in what appeared to be a drug overdose. Officers showed up expecting a medical situation. What they walked away with was something else entirely. Because once Jennings received medical treatment, investigators said the information that came out of that situation pointed directly toward foul play in Allison's disappearance. Like, make it make sense. This man was found barely conscious, and somehow that became the thread that unraveled everything. The case cracked open, and what was underneath it was devastating. According to court documents, on or around August 19th, 2022, Casey Jennings shot Allison Castro in the chest, inside the home they had once shared, the place she had lived, the place that was supposed to be familiar, supposed to be safe. That is where it happened. And then, and this is the part that is hard to sit with, he didn't call for help. He didn't turn himself in. He didn't panic in any way that led to anyone finding out. Instead, Casey Jennings made a decision, a cold, calculated decision, and he carried it out over what investigators believe was a period of time after the shooting. He dismembered her body. Let that land for a second. This was a woman with a name, with a family, with a dream she was actively chasing. And after he took her life, he took apart what remained of her and scattered her across multiple locations. Investigators would later search areas around Beaver Lake as part of their efforts to recover her remains. Some of what they were looking for, they never found. Moving on, because there is more. After everything he did to her body, Jennings went back to that residence and cleaned the scene. He removed or destroyed physical evidence. He made it look like Allison had simply walked out of her own life. And on top of all of that, he stole from her more than $1,000 worth of Allison's property, taken after she was already gone. So we are talking about a shooting, a dismemberment, a cover-up, evidence destruction, and theft, all carried out by one person, the man she used to call her partner. For weeks, none of this was known. Allison's family couldn't reach her and didn't yet know why. Casey Jennings was out here living his life. And Allison, what was left of her, was scattered across northwest Arkansas while her mother in Hawaii was wondering why her daughter wasn't picking up the phone. Period. That is the reality of what happened. When investigators formally got involved in September 2022, they were working a missing persons case. They had no body. They had no crime scene, because it had been cleaned. What they had was a young woman who hadn't been seen in weeks, and an ex-boyfriend whose name kept coming up. And then came September 19th. Police responded to a residence involving Casey Jennings after he was found in an apparent drug overdose. Now, we don't know exactly what was said or what was found in that moment. What we do know is that once Jennings received medical treatment, information came to light that shifted this case from a missing persons investigation into something much more serious. Investigators said that what they uncovered pointed directly to foul play in Allison's disappearance. Oh, so now the whole thing starts falling apart. From that point, law enforcement moved fast. They began searching multiple locations across northwest Arkansas trying to recover Allison's remains. Beaver Lake was among the areas searched. The work was extensive and deeply painful, because what investigators were essentially doing was trying to piece together what Casey Jennings had deliberately scattered. They were searching for a woman in fragments, and even with all of that effort, her remains were never fully recovered. Her mother, Michelle, would go on to make that trip to northwest Arkansas more than 30 times over 4 years. 30 times. Flying across the country, searching, hoping to find enough of her daughter to bring home. In Hawaiian culture, a person's bones carry their spirit, their mana, Every trip Michelle made was about more than justice. It was about making sure Allison's spirit had somewhere to rest. Let me tell you something. That kind of love, that kind of dedication, it doesn't have a word big enough for it. Meanwhile, on September 26th, 2022, just days after the overdose call, Casey Jennings was arrested. He had just been released from the medical facility. Officers were waiting. He was taken into custody and charged with capital murder and abuse of a corpse. Additional charges would follow as the investigation continued to develop. He was held at the Washington County Detention Center without bond from that point forward. No bond. Nowhere to go. The man who had spent weeks covering his tracks was now locked in a cell while investigators worked to build the full picture of what he had done to Allison Castro. But here's what made this case so difficult to prosecute cleanly: the body. Or rather, the absence of it. When you cannot recover remains, when evidence has been deliberately destroyed and a crime scene has been scrubbed, building a capital murder case is a long, painstaking process. Every piece of information, every detail from court documents, every forensic thread had to be pulled carefully and methodically. The family waited. They kept showing up, and the case moved forward, slowly, the way these things always do when someone has worked that hard to make sure there is nothing left to find.
During testimony, Allison Castro's mother said, quote, "I pray she did not suffer." After tearful testimonies from both the defense and the prosecuting attorneys, Casey Jennings has been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Allison Castro. Now, the jury deliberated today for hours. The judge also sentenced him to 22 consecutive years in prison. A fine of $30,000 has been imposed as well. Now, I spoke with the family of Allison Castro on today's sentencing, and they say this experience has been traumatic.
Yes, Allison actually moved here to become a nurse. So there is no living out her dream anymore. This is it. This is over. And I'm hoping that with her family that we can somehow do good in our community and, all the communities that we're from. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard. This has been really hard. Very traumatizing going through something like this. So yeah, I think it's good to know that we reached a verdict. We've been through this multiple times, so.
The defense argued Jennings accidentally shot Castro as he was attempting to commit suicide. Prosecutors argue he murdered Castro for financial gain, and it was done in a cruel and depraved manner.
The trial lasted more than a week, and the whole time, Allison's family sat in that courtroom and had to listen to every detail of what happened to their daughter, their sister, their person. They had already spent 4 years carrying this. 4 years of flying back and forth to Northwest Arkansas, searching, waiting, hoping for answers. And now they had to sit in a room and hear it all laid out in front of a jury. That is a particular kind of strength that most people will never have to find in themselves. Now, the defense had a theory. Casey Jennings's attorneys argued that the shooting was not intentional. Their position was that Jennings had been attempting to take his own life, and that Allison was struck accidentally in the process. That was the story they brought into that courtroom. Girl. Okay. The prosecution had a completely different picture. Prosecutors argued that Casey Jennings murdered Allison Castro for financial gain, that this was deliberate, that it was done in a cruel and depraved manner. And when you line up the facts, the shot to the chest, the dismemberment, the deliberate disposal of her remains across multiple locations, the cleaned crime scene, the destroyed evidence, the theft of her property, the idea that any of this was accidental becomes very hard to hold on to. Like, at what point in an accidental shooting do you stop and decide to dismantle a person's body and scatter them across a lake? Make it make sense. The jury deliberated for hours. They went through the evidence, They weighed both sides. And on June 22, 2026, nearly 4 years after Allison was killed, they came back with their verdict. Guilty. Capital murder. Abuse of a corpse. Tampering with physical evidence. Theft of property. Every charge. Casey Jennings was convicted on every charge. The following day, June 23, 2026, he was sentenced. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. The jury had the option to recommend the death penalty, and they chose not to. But they made absolutely sure he would never walk free. On top of the life sentence, the judge handed down an additional 22 consecutive years and imposed a fine of $30,000. Casey Jennings is never coming home. When Allison's family spoke after the sentencing, you could hear everything in their words. The relief, the exhaustion, the grief that doesn't go away just because a verdict has been reached. One family member said they had been through the process multiple times, that it had been traumatizing, and that knowing Casey would be gone in prison forever brought some relief. Allison's mother spoke about the dream her daughter had been chasing, nursing, a career, a future, and said simply, "There is no living out her dream anymore. This is it. This is over." Those words, that quiet, that finality, and still, through all of it, the family said they want to find a way to do good, in their community, in the communities they come from. They want Allison's name to mean something beyond what was done to her. Allison Castro's remains have never been fully recovered. Her mother, Michelle, still travels to Northwest Arkansas, still searching, still holding on to the belief that she can bring her daughter's spirit home. And every time she makes that trip, she donates blood, a quiet, steady way of giving back to the community that wrapped its arms around her family when they had nowhere else to turn. Anyways, here is what Allison Castro should be remembered for. She was 28 years old. She left home on purpose, with intention, to build a life for herself. She wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to help people. She was in the middle of becoming everything she set out to be, and the person who was supposed to have been someone she trusted took that from her. But hey, her family refuses to let that be the whole story. They are still showing up, still searching, still saying her name, and that right there, that is the kind of love that outlasts everything. Rest, Allison.